The 2008 Summer Olympic Games, officially known as the Games of the XXIX Olympiad and commonly known as Beijing 2008, was a major international multi-sport event that took place in Beijing, China, from 8 to 24 August 2008. A total of 10,942 athletes from 204 national Olympic committees competed in 28 sports and 302 events. China became the 22nd nation to host the Olympic Games and the 18th to hold a Summer Olympic Games. It was the third time that the Summer Olympic Games were held in East Asia and Asia, after Tokyo, Japan, in 1964 and Seoul, South Korea, in 1988. The equestrian events were held in Hong Kong, making it the third time the events of the same Olympics were held under the jurisdiction of two different NOCs, while sailing was contested in Qingdao, and football events took place in several different cities. Beijing was awarded the Games over 4 competitors on the 13th of July 2001, having won a majority of votes from members of the International Olympic Committee after 2 rounds of voting. The government of the People's Republic of China promoted the Games and invested heavily in new facilities and transportation systems. A total of 37 venues were used to host the events, including 12 constructed specifically for use at the Games. The official logo of these Olympic Games, titled Dancing Beijing, refers to the host city by featuring a stylized calligraphic character Jing. The Games were the most watched Olympics in history, attracting 4.7 billion viewers worldwide. Some politicians and non-governmental organizations criticized the choice of China as Olympic host because of the country's human rights record, and protests by critics of China's human rights record, with particular focus on Tibet, marred the international portion of the Olympic torch relay. There were 43 world records and 132 Olympic records set at the 2008 Summer Olympics. An unprecedented 86 countries won at least one medal during the Games. Chinese athletes won the most gold medals, with 51, and 100 medals altogether, while the United States had the most total medals with 110. The final medal tally was led by host China, becoming only the 7th different Olympic team to top an overall medal tally, followed by the United States and Russia. Though there were several controversies, the Games were deemed generally successful, with the rising standard of competition amongst nations across the world. Organization. Beijing was elected as the host city for the 2008 Summer Olympics on the 13th of July 2001, during the 112th IOC session in Moscow, defeating bids from Toronto, Paris, Istanbul, and Osaka. Prior to the session, 5 other cities had submitted bids to the IOC, but failed to make the short list chosen by the IOC Executive Committee in 2000. After the first round of voting, Beijing held a significant lead over the other 4 candidates. Osaka received only 6 votes and was eliminated. In the second round, Beijing was supported by a majority of voters, eliminating the need for subsequent rounds. Toronto's bid was the 5th failure since 1960. Members of the IOC did not disclose the votes, but news reports speculated that broad international support led to China's selection, especially from developing nations who had received assistance from China in the construction of stadiums. The size of China, its increased enforcement of doping controls, and sympathy concerning its loss of the 2000 Summer Olympics to Sydney were all factors in the decision. 8 years earlier, Beijing had led every round of voting for the 2000 Summer Olympics before losing to Sydney by 2 votes in the final round. Human rights concerns expressed by Amnesty International and politicians in both Europe and the United States were considered by the delegates, according to IOC Executive Director François Carrad. Carrad and others suggested that the selection might lead to improvements in human rights in China. In addition, a number of IOC delegates who had formerly been athletes expressed concern about heat and air quality during the Games, considering the high levels of air pollution in Beijing. China outlined plans to address these environmental concerns in its bid application. Costs. On 6 March 2009, the Beijing Organizing Committee for the Olympic Games reported that total spending on the Games was generally as much as that of the Athens 2004 Olympic Games, which was equivalent to about $15 billion. They went on to claim that surplus revenues from the Games would exceed the original target of $16 million. Other reports, however, estimated the total costs from $40 billion to $44 billion, which would make the Games far and away the most expensive ever. Its budget has since been exceeded by the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, which suffered from major cost overruns, causing the budget to exceed $51 billion. Venues. By May 2007, the construction of all 31 Beijing-based Olympic Games venues had begun. The Chinese government renovated and constructed 6 venues outside Beijing as well as 59 training centers. The largest structures built were the Beijing National Stadium, Beijing National Indoor Stadium, Beijing National Aquatic Center, Olympic Green Convention Center, Olympic Green, and Beijing Wuxong Culture and Amp Sports Center. Almost 85% of the construction budget for the 6 main venues was funded by $2.1 billion in corporate bids and tenders. Investments were expected from corporations seeking ownership rights after the Olympics. Some events were held outside Beijing, namely football in Qinhuangdao, Shanghai, Shenyang, and Tianjin, sailing in Qingdao, and, because of the uncertainties of equine diseases and major difficulties in establishing a disease-free zone, the equestrian events were held in Hong Kong. The centerpiece of the 2008 Summer Olympics was the Beijing National Stadium, nicknamed the Bird's Nest because of its nest-like skeletal structure. The stadium hosted both the opening and closing ceremonies as well as the athletics competition. Construction of the venue began on 24 December 2003. The Guangdong Olympic Stadium was originally planned, constructed, and completed in 2001 to help host the Games, but a decision was made to construct a new stadium in Beijing. In 2001, the city held a bidding process to select the best arena design. Several criteria were required of each design, including flexibility for post-Olympics use, a retractable roof, and low maintenance costs. The entry list was narrowed to 13 final designs. The Bird's Nest model submitted by architects Jacques Herzog and Pierre de Meuron in collaboration with Li Xinggang of China Architecture Design and Research Group was selected as the top design by both a professional panel and by a broader audience during a public exhibition. The selection of the design became official in April 2003. Construction of the stadium was a joint venture among the original designers, project architect Stefan Marbach, artist Ai Weiwei, and a group of CADG architects led by Li Xinggang. Its $423 million cost was funded by the state-owned corporate conglomerate CITIC and the Beijing State-Owned Assets Management Company. The 2008 Beijing Olympics caused traditional traditional Hutong neighborhoods to be cleared for the construction of modern Olympic stadiums. In an effort to ensure success for the Games, the government invested billions in building new infrastructure, although clearance to tiny, outdated neighborhoods in Beijing called Hutongs resulted. Jim Yardley, a New York Times reporter, interviews Pan Jinyu, a 64-year-old local resident. They don't want foreigners to see this scarred old face. Feng Shuqin and her husband, Zheng Zhalan, have lived in the house for 50 years, and the family has owned the property before the communists took control in 1949. The government, trying to clear the area, has offered them to move with a compensatory sum of $175,000 USD, but the family insists the land is worth $1.4 million USD. Michael Meyer, an American who lives in the Hutongs, reported that a total of 500,000 residents were relocated from the homes before the Olympics began. Transport to prepare for Olympic visitors. Beijing's transportation infrastructure was expanded. Beijing's airport underwent a major renovation with the addition of the new Terminal 3, designed by architect Norman Foster. Within the city itself, Beijing's subway was doubled in capacity and length, with the addition of 7 lines and 80 stations to the previously existing 4 lines and 64 stations. Included in this expansion was a new link connecting to the city's airport. A fleet of thousands of buses, minibuses, and official cars transported spectators, athletes, and officials between venues. In an effort to improve air quality, the city placed restrictions on construction sites and gas stations, and limited the use of commercial and passenger vehicles in Beijing. For the 20th of June through the 20th of September, passenger vehicle restrictions were placed on alternate days depending on the terminal digit of the car's license plate. It was anticipated that this measure would take 45% of Beijing's 3.3 million cars off the streets. The boosted public transport network was expected to absorb the demand created by these restrictions and the influx of visitors, which was estimated at more than 4 million additional passengers per day. Marketing the 2008 Summer Olympics emblem was known as Dancing Beijing. The emblem combined a traditional Chinese red seal and a representation of the calligraphic character Jing with athletic features. The open arms of the calligraphic word symbolized the invitation from China to the world to share in its culture. IOC President Jacques Rogge was very happy with the emblem, saying, "Your new emblem immediately conveys the awesome beauty and power of China, which are embodied in your heritage and your people." The official motto from the 2008 Olympics was, "One World, One Dream." It called upon the whole world to join in the Olympic spirit and build a better future for humanity, and was chosen from over 210,000 entries submitted from around the world. Following the announcement of the motto, the phrase was used by international advocates of Tibetan secession. Banners reading, "One World, One Dream, Free Tibet" were unfurled from various structures around the globe in the lead-up to the Beijing Olympics, such as from the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge and the Sydney Opera House in Australia. The mascots of Beijing 2008 were the 5 Fuhua, each representing both a color of the Olympic rings and a symbol of Chinese culture. In 2006, the Beijing Organizing Committee released pictograms of 35 Olympic disciplines. This set of sport icons was named the Beauty of Seal Characters, because of each pictogram's likeness to Chinese seal script. Media coverage. The 2008 Games were the first to be produced and broadcast entirely in high definition by the host broadcaster. In comparison, American broadcaster NBC broadcast only half of the 2006 Turin Winter Games in HD. In the bid for the Olympic Games in 2001, Beijing stated to the Olympic Evaluation Commission that there would be restrictions on media reporting and movement of journalists up to and including the Olympic Games. Quote, however, some media outlets claimed that organizers ultimately failed to live up to this commitment. According to Nielsen Media Research, 4.7 billion viewers worldwide tuned into some of the television coverage, 1/5 larger than the 3.9 billion who watched the 2004 Olympic Games in Athens. American broadcaster NBC produced only 2 hours of online streaming video for the 2006 Winter Games but produced approximately 2,200 hours of coverage from the 2008 Summer Games. CNN reported that, for the first time, live online video rights in some markets for the Olympics have been separately negotiated, not part of the overall broadcast rights. Single quote. The new media of the digital economy was said to be growing 9 times faster than the rest of the advertising market. The International European Broadcasting Union provided live coverage and highlights of all arenas only for certain territories on the website. Eurovision Sports TV. Many national broadcasters likewise restricted the viewing of online events to the domestic audiences. The General National Copyright Administration of China announced that individual and websites will face fines as high as 100,000 yuan for uploading recordings of Olympic Games video to the Internet, part of an extensive campaign to protect the pertinent intellectual property rights. The Olympic Committee also set up a separate YouTube channel at Beijing 2008. Theme song. The theme song of the 2008 Olympic Games was You and Me, which was composed by Chen Kegang, the musical director of the opening ceremony. It was performed during the opening ceremony by Chinese singer Lu Wan and British singer Sarah Brightman. Torch relay. The design of the 2008 Olympic torch was based on traditional scrolls and used the traditional Chinese design known as the propitious clouds. The torch was designed to remain lit in 65 km/h winds and in rain of up to 50 mm/h. The relay, with the theme Journey of Harmony, was met with protests and demonstrations by pro-Tibet supporters throughout its journey. It lasted 130 days and carried the torch 137,000 kilometers, the longest distance of any Olympic torch relay since the tradition began at the 1936 Berlin Games. The torch relay was described as a public relations disaster for China by USA Today, with protests against China's human rights record, particularly focused on Tibet. The IOC subsequently barred future Olympics organizers from staging international torch relays. The relay began the 24th of March 2008 in Olympia, Greece. Further, it traveled across Greece to Panathinaikos Stadium in Athens, and then to Beijing, arriving on the 31st of March. From Beijing, the torch followed a route passing through every continent except Antarctica. The torch visited cities on the Silk Road, symbolizing ancient links between China and the rest of the world. A total of 21,880 torchbearers were selected from around the world by various organizations and entities. The international portion of the relay was problematic. The month-long world tour encountered wide-scale anti-Chinese protests, after trouble in London involving attempts by protesters to put out the flame. The torch was extinguished in Paris the following day. The American leg in San Francisco on the 9th of April was altered without prior warning to avoid such disturbances. Although there were still demonstrations along the original route, the relay was further delayed and simplified after the 2008 Sichuan earthquake hit western China. The flame was carried to the top of Mount Everest on a 108 kilometers long highway, scaling the Tibetan side of the mountain, built especially for the relay. The $19.7 million Blacktop project spanned from Tingri County of Zhejiang Prefecture to the Everest Base Camp. In March 2008, China banned mountaineers from climbing its side of Mount Everest, and later persuaded the Nepalese government to close the side as well, officially citing environmental concerns. It also reflected concerns by the Chinese government that Tibet activists may try to disrupt its plans to carry the Olympic torch up the world's tallest peak. The originally proposed route would have taken the torch through Taipei after leaving Vietnam and before heading for Hong Kong. However, the government of Taiwan objected to this proposal, claiming that this route would make the portion of the relay in Taiwan appear to be part of the torch's domestic journey through China, rather than a leg on the international route. This dispute, as well as Chinese demands that the flag and the national anthem of the Republic of China be banned along the route, led the government of Taiwan to reject the proposal that it be part of the relay route, and the two sides of the Taiwan Strait subsequently blamed each other for injecting politics into the event calendar. All times are in China's Standard Time in the following calendar from the 2008 Olympic Games. Each blue box represents an event competition, such as a qualification round on that day. The yellow boxes represent days during which medal awarding finals for a sport were held. Each bullet in these boxes is an event final, the number of bullets per box representing the number of finals that were contested on the day. On the left, the calendar lists each sport with events held during the games, and at the right how many gold medals were won in that sport. There is a key at the top of the calendar to aid the reader. Olympic and world records. 125 Olympic records including 37 world records were set in various events at the Games. In swimming, 65 Olympic swimming records including 25 world records were broken due to the use of the LZR Racer, a specialized swimming suit developed by NASA and the Australian Institute of Sport. Only 2 swimming Olympic records remained intact after the Games. Opening ceremony. The opening ceremony officially began at 8 p.m. China Standard Time on the 8th of August 2008 in the Beijing National Stadium. The number 8 is associated with prosperity and confidence in Chinese culture, and here it was a triple 8 for the date and 1 extra for time. The ceremony was co-directed by Chinese filmmaker Zhang Yimou and Chinese choreographer Zhang Jigang and featured a cast of over 15,000 performers. The ceremony lasted over 4 hours and was reported to have cost over $100 million to produce. A rich assembly of ancient Chinese art and culture dominated the ceremony. It opened with the beating of food drums for the countdown. Subsequently, a giant scroll was unveiled and became the show's centerpiece. The official song of the 2008 Olympics, titled You and Me, was performed by Britain's Sarah Brightman and China's Lu Wan, on a large spinning rendition of the globe. The last recipient in the Olympic torch relay, former Chinese gymnast Li Ning, ignited the cauldron, after being suspended into the air by wires and completing a lap of the national National Stadium at roof height. The opening ceremony was lauded by spectators and various international presses as spectacular and spellbinding. Hein Verbruggen, chairman of the IOC Coordination Commission for the 29th Olympiad, called the ceremony a grand, unprecedented success. The program for the Beijing Games was quite similar to that of the 2004 Summer Olympics held in Athens. There were 28 sports and 302 events at the 2008 Games. 9 new events were held, including 2 from the new cycling discipline of BMX. Women competed in the 3,000-meter steeplechase for the first time. Open water swimming events for men and women, over the distance of 10 kilometers, were added to the swimming discipline. Team events in table tennis replaced the doubles events. In fencing, women's team foil and women's team sabre replaced men's team foil and women's team acute. 2 sports were open only to men, baseball and boxing, while 1 sport and 1 discipline were open only to women, softball and synchronized swimming. Equestrian and mixed badminton are the only sports in which men and women compete together. The following were the 302 events in 28 sports that were contested at the Games. The number of events contested in each sport is indicated in parentheses. In addition to the official Olympic sports, the Beijing Organizing Committee was given special dispensation by the IOC to run a wushu competition in parallel to the Games. The wushu tournament Beijing 2008 saw 128 athletes from 43 countries participate, with medals awarded in 15 separate events. However, these were not to be added to the official medal tally since wushu was not on the program of the 2008 Olympic Games. Closing ceremony. The 2008 Summer Olympics closing ceremony concluded the Beijing Games on the 24th of August 2008. It began at 8 p.m. China Standard Time, and took place at the Beijing National Stadium. The ceremony included handover of the Games from Beijing to London. Guo Jinlong, the mayor of Beijing, handed over the Olympic flag to the mayor of London, Boris Johnson, followed by a performance organized by the London Organizing Committee of the Olympic Games and Paralympic Games. This presentation included performances by guitarist Jimmy Page and recording artist Leona Lewis. Footballer David Beckham was also featured during London's presentation. Medal table. 87 nations earned medals, 54 of which won gold medals, both setting new records for Olympic Games. 118 participating countries did not win a medal. Athletes from China won 51 gold medals, the most of any nation at these Olympics, becoming the first nation other than the United States and Russia to lead in medals since Germany at the 1936 Summer Olympics. The United States team won the most medals overall, with 110. Afghanistan, Mauritius, Sudan, Tajikistan and Togo won the first Olympic medals. Athletes from Mongolia and Panama won the nation's first gold medals. An athlete from Serbia won its first medal under that name, having previously won medals as part of Yugoslavia and Serbia and Montenegro. American swimmer Michael Phelps received a total of 8 gold medals, more than any other Olympian in a single Olympic Games, setting numerous world and Olympic records in the process. Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt also set records in multiple events, completing the 100 meters final with a time of 9.69 seconds, surpassing his own previous world record. Russian-born American gymnast Nastya Liukin won the all-around gold medal in artistic gymnastics, becoming the third American woman to do so, following Mary Lou Retton in 1984 and Carly Patterson in 2004. These are the top 10 nations that won medals in the 2008 Games. Host nation.